on kind of on a meta level of actually how we can discuss disability together in a way that shows dignity and respect to everyone. A little bit about me. My background is in tech. I've spent the better part of the last 10 years working in product management at a number of startups and a couple of large companies in the Bay Area. And a couple of years ago, I ended up developing a disability. And when I looked for resources about how to kind of manage my professional life alongside this new part of my life of managing a disability, I didn't find a whole lot. I didn't know a lot of people that I worked with who openly managed a disability. I didn't have a lot of examples to fall on. And actually the first time that I encountered any type of professional resource related to disability was when my company was acquired by Adobe about 2 years ago. And as a new employee, I was checking out the website and looking at their diversity and inclusion page, and I saw that there was an employee resource group, or an ERG, for people with disabilities. If you haven't heard of an ERG, it's basically kind of like an affinity group within a company. A lot of large companies have them, but increasingly more medium-sized companies are introducing them as well. So therefore, folks who are underrepresented have a place to come together and discuss whatever's important to them. They're typically employee-led. And so I saw that Adobe had what was called Access Adobe on the website, and that was really meaningful to me as an employee with a disability to see that my new employer really wanted me to work there and cared about employees with disabilities. So really just seeing that on the website is meaningful. But when I started to dig in and see if there was an email list or meetings on the calendar, there wasn't. And so that was kind of an opportunity for me to roll my sleeves up and get involved and start recruiting. And that was my first foray into diversity and inclusion work and into disability advocacy, really. We ended up growing a small group. We started meeting monthly. It was really positive for me, and I learned a lot through those meetings. And eventually decided I actually wanted to pivot my career towards diversity and inclusion and disability advocacy rather than product management. And that's why I'm here now. So I am working with CODIV, with Dan and Elaine, which has been really fantastic. And then I'm also working on a brand new publication that we released this month called Tech Disability Project. So I'll have a link at the end of the slide if you're interested in checking it out. But every day during the month of October, we're publishing stories written by tech employees who experience illness, injury, or disability. And it's been really fantastic. Nina has written a story, thank you. And just getting to see such a complex, concept from so many different people's perspectives. So that's what I'm up to now. What's on deck for today? There are 3 questions I'd really like to answer with you. These are questions that I've held in the past. These are questions that I hear from other folks who are interested in learning more about this topic. The first is, who is disabled? Who qualifies as a person with disability? What do I need to know about disability in the workplace? And what language should I use to discuss disability? So we'll be going over those 3 questions, and then as a bonus at the end, there's actually some really incredible history in the disability advocacy movement that's happened right here in Denver. And I'm saying it's a bonus because I'm not an expert in it, but I definitely want to touch on it, and I'll point you towards some places where you can learn even more. All right, so who qualifies as disabled? We have a little smack already. Maybe you can still see them. So disability really is an umbrella term for a number of different categories. Oftentimes we might think of a disability as including wheelchair users and folks who are blind, folks who are deaf. In fact, our community is much broader than that. There are all sorts of folks who fall under the term disability. So we've got physical disabilities, and I just have a couple of, just 2 examples for each line. It's obviously not close to exhaustive, but just to give you a sense. Physical disability, sensory disability, psychological disability, chronic illness, neurological disability, cognitive disabilities. And this isn't a canonized set of categories by any means, but really just wanted to introduce just how broad of a term disability is and how many folks it can apply to. That being said, not everyone who technically has perhaps received one of the diagnoses that would qualify under disability necessarily personally identifies as a person with disability, and that's an important distinction to make. we have kind of a legal understanding and there are legal rights and protections that people with disabilities get in the workplace. And so we want to understand, okay, do I qualify? Who does qualify and has access to those protections? While also holding space for the fact that not everyone might have personally integrated the word disability or disabled into their kind of personal expression of their identity. So we can hold room for kind of both of those concepts in this conversation. For those of us who do identify, there are a couple of different ways. So there's this notion of person-first language, like a person with disabilities or people with disabilities. That's kind of a concept that some folks really gravitate to, saying, first and foremost, I'm a person, and I happen to have a disability, and that language works for a lot of folks. Another way of looking at it is identity-first language, or a disabled person, I'm disabled. Some people prefer this. Some people would say, actually, my disability is so deeply ingrained in who I am that it's not something I want to tack on. It's something that I want to really embrace first and foremost. The autistic community in particular, I think, is more of the identity-first language. A lot of folks in that community prefer to identify as autistic rather than a person with autism because they really see that their autism is so deeply ingrained in who they are. So both are okay, and this won't be the last time I say this, we can always defer to the preference of the individual. Each person gets to choose exactly how they like to be identified and what types of words that they like to use in conversations about themselves on an individual level. But at a high level, when thinking about disability, according to the disability advocates that come before me, both of these, both person-first and identity-first language is okay. Just to understand the magnitude of how disability impacts our society, a quarter of adult Americans experience disability. We are not a small group of folks. We're talking about over 60 million Americans. We're talking about over 1 billion people worldwide who experience disability. So, yes, the magnitude cannot be understated, especially in relation to how little we actually tend to talk about disability. And always remembering that most people who have disabilities have an invisible disability. You wouldn't be able to know simply by taking a look at them or even having a conversation with them whether that person has a disability or not. So 70% of us have invisible disabilities. And again, this month is Disability Employment Awareness Month, and employment rate for people with disabilities is 36%. For non-disabled folks, it's about 76%. So we can see that there's a lot of room to grow in terms of providing accessible interview processes and making sure that folks in our community have access to employment, have the accommodations they need, and jobs they're really going to be able to thrive in and keep, and in order to support themselves. All right, so our next question. What do I need to know about disability in the workplace? So the main point that I really want to hit home here is that people with disabilities qualify for reasonable accommodation at work. And again, when we say people with disabilities, it's not simply those of us who have decided to opt into using that language in our personal lives. That's a choice we all get to make. But there is kind of a legal definition, and there are a group of us who have legal protections, and that's why embracing the word disability is important in a work context if we need it. So what's a reasonable accommodation? I decided to just actually put the legal terms up here that the government uses to make sure we all have a shared understanding. Reasonable accommodation is any change to a job, the work environment, or the way things are usually done that allows an individual with a disability to apply for a job, perform job functions, or enjoy equal access to benefits available to other individuals in the workplace. So we've got some flexibility here. Really, what's important to understand is that for folks with disabilities, there might be a normative way of doing work, a normative way that a workplace thinks about treating employees, addressing employees, interviewing employees, and those of us with a disability might need to make an accommodation for ourselves, might need to modify things a little bit and work with our employers to do that in order to make sure that we can take care of ourselves during the day and that we can thrive in our workplaces with all of our needs met. So some examples of what these accommodations might look like. It could be a specific piece of hardware or software. It might have something to do with our desk, our chair, our mouse or keyboard or machine. It might be something related to when and how we work and having a flexible schedule. Not everyone is able to work first thing in the morning, not everyone is able to work late at night, and flexibility in terms of hours can be the difference between someone being able to have a certain job or not. Ability to work from home, a lot of us need to spend more time at home, and having a setup at home where we're able to do that can, again, make all the difference for certain individuals. Also modified responsibilities, and this might be for a period of time, because the way that we experience disability can change over time. I think that's something that we really want allies to understand. Every day and every hour of the day might look a little bit different for some of us in terms of what we need and how our symptoms are presenting. An example of modified responsibility is actually someone who's created a Keys for Tech disability project that we are publishing tomorrow. It's a software engineer, a mixed panel, who has bipolar, and getting consistent sleep at night is really important to her. But because she's on the engineering team, they have on-call rotation where you have the chance to be paged in the middle of the night and need to fix a production issue at any hour of the day. And so she brought this up with her manager and was like, look, here's what I think I can do. I think I might be able to do 1 or 2 pages during a week at night, but beyond that, it's not going to work for me. So what can we do? Can someone else cover for me? Can I swap with them? And sure enough, the manager is like, yes, your mental health is absolutely our priority here. We can be flexible, make something work. So that's an example of like a slightly modified responsibility that kind of took a conversation and took some flexibility on behalf of her team, her manager, to make it work, but they came up with a solution that worked for everyone. And a big ... here, these are just some examples. Coming up with the right accommodations is quite the creative process. Certainly for the individual who has a disability who's there's a process of figuring out, okay, actually, what are the pain points? Like, what change would make a difference for me? And being able to have a process to work with the manager or someone in HR on that, and knowing that it might not stay static over time. So one stat that is really important to me is that only 21% of office employees with disabilities choose to disclose at work. And of course, at least for folks with invisible disabilities, it is a choice that we each get to make. But given the importance of accommodations, without disclosing, you won't necessarily have access to that accommodations process, to be able to have access to that legal protection that you have as a person with disabilities to get those accommodations. So what this number is telling me is that potentially up to 80% of our population who does have a job might be working without access to the important accommodations that they need to be taking the best care of their health and themselves, as well as being able to do their best work for their employers. And I think there are a lot of reasons why people choose not to disclose at work, and the stigma's real. Steve, sitting back there, has shared some pretty incredible stories with me. If you want to learn more about disabilities, he's a great person to talk to, particularly related to employment. But the stigma is real, and I think that's why spaces like this, where we can really share information, share language, with shared understanding, can create more safety for employees with disabilities to feel comfortable disclosing and being able to work at a place where they feel comfortable disclosing. So, asterisk that this is not legal advice, but I also just wanted to paint like a brief picture of what an accommodations process might look like in case anyone in the room finds themselves on one side or the other of the table in a conversation like this. It's important for every manager to understand an accommodation process, certainly everyone in HR, as well as folks with disabilities, like not knowing what it might entail can be a little bit daunting. This is kind of what the process looked like for me when I worked at Adobe. So when I was a new employee, I had new employee paperwork to fill out, and there was a little box I could check and it asked if I identified as a person with disabilities, and I said yes. And then a couple of days later, someone whose job it was to run accommodations for North America shot me an email. Said, hey, I saw you disclose. I was wondering if there are any accommodations you'd like to request. And sure enough, there was. I really needed to be able to work from home 1 day a week, on Wednesdays ideally, and to have a second computer that I could keep at home so I didn't have to bring one back and forth. And to me, that was going to make a really big difference on my ability to perform my job function. So I also needed to just grab a quick note from one of my care team members. It could be a doctor, it could be a therapist, it could be a PT. In many cases, you just need a note, and that didn't have to go to my manager or my coworkers. That just went to HR. It could be kept confidential, but it was just one thing they asked me to provide. And then this accommodations person hosted a pretty quick conversation between me and my manager, just going over the accommodations that I needed, making sure my manager gave it a thumbs up, which he did, and then we signed some quick paperwork. And that paperwork was actually designed to protect me as an employee so that if I changed managers or my manager choosed on me, that the accommodations that I needed were inked and that it wasn't going to be going anywhere, even if there were other personnel changes in the company. And then we ordered the computer. So that's kind of what the process looked like. Again, I don't professionally design these processes, but just wanted to just show a glimpse of what an interaction could look like. Okay, so last up here, our third question is, what language should I use to discuss disability? This is a really big one. As soon as I started getting involved in disability advocacy at all, I started to notice that everyone was using really different words. I think I see people in D&I using different words. Certainly within people with disability community, like we all use different words to describe disability. Within even disability advocates, I see kind of some conflicting messages. So what I would tell you, I think it's important to have shared knowledge, and there may be things coming up that someone might say, oh, I disagree with that, and as Elaine mentioned, that is totally fine. And I wanted to put forth some type of guide, because I'd rather have that conversation and I'd rather put people with some language to use than to not have the conversation at all, just because there's some more work to be done in order to arrive at some really shared language. But this is what I rely on, which is called the Center for Disability Rights. They have some guidelines, and again, we'll share these slides so you can grab these links if you like. And it's a little bit academic, but man, reading these guidelines has been a game changer for me. I feel like they're really cohesive, and that they have really good reasons for why they're advocating for certain words over the other. So that's what I'm leaning on for the purposes of this conversation. But the bottom line is, in terms of kind of like a paradigm to wrap our minds around, is that we want to root out language that describes disability as unfortunate, as less than, as problematic. We want to be embracing words that show disability as neutral, especially in professional context, because it is. So again, a caveat, we always want to defer to the preference of an individual. Whenever dealing with someone, working with someone one-on-one, there could be someone who wants to use one of the words that these guidelines are recommending not to. Please never correct that person or try to educate that person on how to describe their own identity. And if you're writing, copy for your website or your D&I manual or a Facebook post, like having some guidelines around like high level, okay, what's a thumbs up? What are thumbs up words to use around disability, I think is good. All right, so on the left, under an X, we have handicap and special needs. And on the right, under a green check mark, we have the word disability. So here's my understanding of why we're phasing out the word handicapped and replacing it wholesale with disability. My understanding is that the word handicap was coined by some non-disabled leaders who were driving for disability advocacy several decades ago. When disability, early days in disability advocacy, a lot of the people leading the movement were non-disabled, and our population did rely on their support and allyship. And as we know, it's really important for those of us who identify to be championing our own causes and our own communities. And disability advocates, again, who come before us, have chosen that word disability, and that was coined by people with disabilities. And so that is my understanding of one of the reasons why we're really embracing that word. So next, on the left, under an X, we have handicapped, challenged, differently able, handicapable. And on the right, we have disabled person and person with disability. And I meant to animate that green circle, so ignore that for one moment if you don't mind. So again, the word disability is what we've codified into our legal protections. And so differently abled or handicapable, some of these kind of modifications, I think, one, you're missing out on being able to identify with the word that provides you legal protections. And two, this is my sense, is that folks see the word disabled and say, oh, I don't know if I like that word. That word, I don't know if I want to be disabled. Like, it feels like a lot of people don't. I want to make a different word. I want to distance myself from that word. And I think that's where we're getting some of these other things like differently able. And so when I step back and think about disability advocacy, I really want to work on making sure that the word disabled does not come off as a problem or something that anyone would want to distance themselves with. Again, we're going for neutrality. Like, disabled is a neutral word. It's just the way that I identify. It's not good or bad. And so I think that we already talked about kind of person first versus identity first, but that's why we're leaning more towards using the word disabled or disability. And then animated in the green circle, not disabled. I just wanted to underscore that I think there's a misconception that literally, and from an etymological perspective, that disabled means less able. And it doesn't. It just doesn't. Like, that doesn't make sense, right? Like, I'm not less able than the next person standing next to me. That's not the definition of disability. Disability means, one, that maybe I've been diagnosed with one of those conditions from our first slide, and two, that I'm kind of operating in a world that actually wasn't built with my brain and body in mind. And really, when we're talking about, a professional context or transportation, education, relationships, anything besides a doctor's visit that I'm having, when we're talking about disability in society, it's really important that we don't try to medicalize disability or really try to focus on, something being quote unquote wrong with someone's brain or body, because that's not what the conversation is about. The conversation is about how we can be building a more accessible world that includes everyone. And so I wanted to underscore that disabled does not mean less able. So here's another one. We have on the left, under red X, we have visual impairment and hearing impairment. And on the right, under a green check mark, we have blind or low vision or deaf or hard of hearing. I think the guideline is trying to root out the word impairment, because impairment what does that mean? It means something's wrong. And again, when we're chasing after words to describe disability that are neutral and are trying to move away from describing any type of problem, sticking with blind or deaf ends up being sending that message more than using the word impairment. But a funny story, one of the forums I'm part of, someone introduced themselves the other day. I said, hey, here's my name, I'm visually impaired, and then put in parentheses, but apparently I'm not supposed to say that anymore, so I don't even know. And so I think, just to show, I think, again, it's not trying to call anyone out or make anyone wrong with this language stuff. Even in the disability community, I think we're all working to kind of keep up and do our best to keep up on the advocacy front, in addition to keeping up just with our own stuff. So yeah, that's, I think, why that's there in the guidelines. Okay, on the left we've got wheelchair bound, on the right we have wheelchair user. Again, right, wheelchair bound, there's something kind of like suffering about that. And I think a lot of wheelchair users' experience in their chair is really positive. It's something that really works for them. And I think a lot of wheelchair users don't consider themselves bound to that wheelchair. And so it's important, especially for non-disabled folks, to internalize that. And again, we're just describing a person. We're not trying to add any affect beyond that. Okay, so on the left we have crazy, mad, psycho. On the right we have neurodivergent. I'm working right now on moving the word crazy out. It's hard. It's one of those things that's going to take me months of catching myself and asking my partner to catch me. But really, I don't know that necessarily folks are usually using the words on the left to describe specifically a person who experiences mental health symptoms, but these words just have a legacy of being used as weapons. And so I think we're all better off just kind of rooting them out of the way that we talk about things in our day-to-day. And if we do want to end up talking about folks who have any type of brain condition, neurodivergent is a word that's really emerging right now as a way to refer to that, which I think can be really positive. So, similar to wheelchair bound, on the left we have suffers from, afflicted by, stricken with, and on the right we have has insert disability. Again, we're not trying to imbue, saying that someone's suffering from something is adding a whole lot to their experience that may or may not be true. It just isn't up to you to be putting on them. So again, we can just say that if you need to, so-and-so has XY disability. Okay, so I think there will probably be some people who are surprised to see at least one of the words on the left. So on the left we have under the X, normal, able-bodied, healthy. And on the right we have non-disabled and neurotypical. I think a lot of folks, even in DNI spaces, do use the word able-bodied. I think that's well-intentioned. But it always has struck me a little bit off, and I wasn't surprised to see it, the guidelines suggesting this, because again, it's kind of, it seems like they're taking the word disabled and saying, oh, well, if they're disabled, if they're less able, then this other person over here must be able, and they're able-bodied. And there's just kind of a positivity that you're throwing at that able-bodied person with that word, I think, where we prefer for it to be a little bit more neutral and not kind of praising that able-bodied nature in any way. So non-disabled is kind of that I think is a more appropriate quote-unquote opposite to disabled rather than something like able-bodied. And certainly words like normal and healthy just have a lot of connotations for people with disabilities that aren't healthy or aren't normal that are absolutely not true. And so I think rooting out that language is important as we speak respectfully about disability. And then neurotypical would be kind of that quote-unquote opposite of neurodivergent. So that's the language we can use when talking about brains. And now we have just a couple of kind of questions and comments. So on the left, under a red X, what happened? Oh my gosh. If I had a nickel for every time someone asked me this in a professional context, or an Uber ride, or just moving around my life, it's exhausting. Not everyone who has a boot on their leg has some really cool, skiing-related story with a punchline that has party appeal. Maybe some folks do, but a lot of us don't. And needing to explain ourselves to every person who happens to have curiosity just because we happen to have some sign of visible disability at the time is really exhausting and often unwanted. If someone does want to talk about it, they'll probably bring it up. And that experience is, of course, fine too. But especially as a coworker, I think I'm actually shocked by just how acceptable, socially acceptable it seems to be to inquire about an injury or something of that nature in a meeting in front of lots of people. I've had it happen, and it's kind of awful. So I recommend just holding those questions, unless you're talking to someone who you're really close with and you talk about this stuff anyways, like that's different. But if you're in a meeting or something, any professional context, what's wrong? It's like, oh, you think something's wrong? Like that's just, we want to move away from wrongness when we talk about disability. Are you okay? Again, it's like, well, what does okay mean? Like, I'm having a panic attack, so, I've been better, and, like, I don't need to go to the emergency room, like, I'm okay. But the question, are you okay, tends to feel like it's more about the okayness of the person asking, like, am I okay? Do I have to do something? And it's like, if someone's experiencing something, better to just simply let them experience it, and you can manage your own experience of whatever's going on too. And then the last, just why are you blank? Again, just like we've rooted out a lot of questions like, when are you having kids? Or, asking your trans person about the details of their medical history. It's like, no, that's not your business. And this is a professional context. And so I think applying that to the disability population is really important too. But then on the right side, we have some other questions. And questions are great. Like, certain questions are fantastic. Do you need anything? I love that question. I love the reinforcement that I'm allowed to need something, that's okay, and that I can say yes or no, and that no is just as fine, and the answer is yes, and that if I do need something, I can focus on what I need instead of explaining whatever backstory is going on in my brain or body that I'd rather keep to my own business. Another great open-ended question, how can I help? Like, that's great, I need help. Lots of people need help, like help's great. Please ask, how can I help? And then if someone says, oh no, I'm okay right now, like that's okay, and then you can step away, you don't have to help. But that extending that offer can be really nice. Let me know if you need anything is another thing, especially for managers. Hearing a manager say, let me know if you need anything, like that's music to my ears. Like I'd love to be able to let you know if I need something. I don't always feel safe for a variety of reasons to let someone know that I need something. So those are some questions. So here's the last one. This is just an X of, I'm so sorry. It's like literally, even in the D&I community, I was on a phone call with someone the other day giving a spiel not too different from what I gave at the beginning of this conversation. Where I was like, oh, I was working, developing disability, I'm so sorry. It's okay. It's okay. Yes, if something truly tragic or terrible, or if someone's crying, like there are appropriate times to say I'm sorry, but simply the presence of someone experiencing a disability is, I'm so sorry, it's just kind of dissonant from the experience that we're having. Typically, it tends to reflect more about the experience that the person saying it is having. And again, like folks are allowed to have their own experience of witnessing disability, but I encourage people to manage that on their own and not necessarily need to invite the person with disability in front of them to be part, support them in that experience in that moment. And when in doubt around anything about language, we're just people, person, human being. These words are always available. We don't always need to describe a person with disability by using disability language because we are just people, just like everyone. So these words are always available too. Okay, here's our bonus round, and then we'll have time for questions or comments that anyone might have. So 40 years ago this year was a really important protest that happened surrounding disability rights right here in Denver. So there was a group of young folks, mostly wheelchair users, who at the time were basically ended up in something that looked like a senior center with people who weren't their age, they weren't getting the care they need, there was some neglect and abuse going on, and so there was this fantastic effort to relocate certain folks into the second independent living center in the United States. The first was in Berkeley and the second was here in Denver, to basically support them on living on their own. Yes, they needed attendance and certain accommodations. These folks were living on their own and were kind of building up their advocacy muscles. And the next big front for them beyond independent living was transportation. We're post-civil rights, but people with disabilities actually weren't represented in the civil rights movement and didn't get legal protections back in the 60s. So the government, all these agencies, people with disabilities didn't have protections in the 70s, and none of the buses had lifts. So folks now had this gang of 19, they were living independently, but they weren't able to go to a concert or the movies or the shopping or whatever they wanted to do. And so they staged this incredible protest at Broadway and Colfax and brought their chairs and surrounded a bus at a bus stop so that the bus couldn't move, and stayed there for 2 days. This picture is probably on the latter end of that 2 days after not moving, in order to really bring attention to the fact that not everyone had access to transportation in Denver. And of course, change doesn't happen overnight, but this group did affect incredible change here in Denver over the years. Denver now has one of the most accessible public transit systems in the country. And folks in this initial group ended up being, these types of protests went viral, so to speak, and this group ended up continuing to advocate for disability rights all the way, continuing now, certain folks who are still with us, but through the ADA, that wasn't passed until 1990. 1990, under George Bush, is when people with disabilities got that legal protection that we're talking about today. So there is a PBS documentary that you turned me on to, and I've got it linked here for anyone who'd like to watch it. It's just an hour. It is fantastic footage about the history of disability advocacy here in Colorado and around the nation that I highly recommend. And then here are just a couple of other links to Tech Disability Project, which I told you about. We'd love to have you join the Creative Slack channel, and you can follow me on Instagram and then Creative on Instagram as well. That's all. Thank you.
So yeah, we'll open it up to questions, comments from anybody. Joy?
Can you define DNI again?
You define DNI again?
That was an acronym that slipped in. Apologies. D and I is short for diversity and inclusion. So that's kind of, there are folks embedded in companies, there are consultants, and this is a DNI, diversity and inclusion effort, really to transform our workplaces to be more diverse and inclusive.
If you're managing someone and they have not disclosed a disability, but you can tell they have one, or that you would like to make accommodations for them, what can you do as a manager? Is there anything you can do?
Great question. So I do think that one click up from that, just at the employer level, having an accommodations process is really important. Ideally, it's actually not resting on the manager's shoulders, that everyone who works at the company knows that there is an accommodations process. New employees have that chance to tick the box when they get in, and that existing employees have a chance to take advantage of the accommodations process too. And I think including that in your all hands, like being proactive about making sure that people know it's available is a great thing that people can do. Every relationship between a manager and a report is different in terms of the level of intimacy and comfort and care, and I think it is kind of on a case-by-case basis about whether it makes sense to bring it up. I do think there are probably some ways that you could just kind of mention what's available, and again, having that process behind you is much easier than needing to invent something on the spot for one of your reports.
As a colleague, so if you're a colleague to someone that identifies as disabled, would you have any advice on maybe an experience that you had that was so profound that made you feel very, very much wanting to share that you identify that way, or something that really made you feel welcome or included, to make you just comfortable coming from someone who doesn't identify as a disabled person? Is there anything you can think of that stuck out to you, or anybody that you know?
So for a non-disabled person, are there things that they can say proactively to a colleague with a disability?
Yeah.
That's a great question. I mean, I always think that it's positive to simply create discussion around disability, whether there's someone that you know or an experience you had on the subway or whatever it may be, just to, again, be normalizing the topic of disability altogether. I think if you're close with someone and you happen to witness or experience something related to their disability alongside them, there are all sorts of supportive things you can say. I'm here for you. Again, let me know if you need anything. You could mention, oh, I actually went to this fantastic talk. Sorry, I actually didn't mean for that to be humble brag. Sorry. I went to a meetup about disability and I learned something. You know, there are ways in order to put yourself out there that aren't necessarily questions that are prying or requiring them to say anything to you.
Yeah, quick, well, a couple comments. I guess comment on Elaine's question. One thing I've done too is almost like at a team level instead of at the individual level, make sure, hey, we've got so many people on the team, like wanted to make sure everyone's aware of because we have resource groups at my company as well. We've got these amazing resource groups, like there's anything you want to get involved in, and kind of list off like the options and put them to those resources, and I think that's helped a lot. One guy on my team got involved in the veterans resource group, and he had no idea that it was available. So just stuff like that helps at a team level and not feeling that awkwardness one-on-one. One comment on your "I'm so sorry." This has happened to me a lot when you tell people you have a younger sister with Down syndrome. They're like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." And oddly enough, the odds are very, very crazy here, but my older sister has a baby who also happens to have Down syndrome. And I was talking to a colleague once just about some family stuff, and she was in the hospital and talking about like needing to take a little bit of time to help my sister out. And I told him, her daughter was born with Down syndrome. He goes, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." I was like, okay, you clearly have no experience with anyone with a disability because it's the worst thing you can say. And in the moment, like, I get really fired up. And you have to balance that, like, teaching opportunity in a moment with, like, in my mind, reacting kind of negatively or overreacting. So I was like, don't be sorry. There's nothing wrong with her. She's perfectly healthy. She just has a couple things that need to be addressed. Any normal baby would. And, like, Down syndrome is a great thing. This is the biggest blessing to our family. So, it's almost like using those opportunities to teach people instead of sometimes I would get, like, people would offer my younger sister a kid's menu when we walk into a restaurant. She's 30 years old. And I would just look at the manager or the hostess and I would say, she's 30, she doesn't need a kid's menu. And then I started to say, well, that's kind of the right way to approach it. Maybe I should use this as a teaching moment because they've probably never been taught or trained what to do in that situation. So using, like, in my mind, it's like changing my mindset to teaching versus reacting to those situations. So I really resonated with the "I'm so sorry" comment.
And like, we can remember that some folks are totally out in the open to say, "Oh, FYI, like, yeah, I have bipolar, I'm low vision," and are sharing that information, and interacting with a colleague who's come forward and shared something with you is probably going to look a little bit differently than interacting with someone who maybe hasn't shared something, where there's probably some level of assumptions playing in the background. So there's definitely a spectrum.
I work a lot with getting people interviews, so obviously this is great once you accommodate for those, but there's also accommodations legally we have to make for interviews, and I think a lot of people that are disabled don't know about these. We want to go out of our way to try to expand the diverse pool that our companies are hiring from and accommodate for the interviews, but it's hard for us to have a dialogue with our consultants about what they may or may not know is accessible to them. I don't know if you have any thoughts around how to maybe navigate that, because it is a little tricky.
So you're talking about how to discuss it with the consultants that you're working with, and are they performing the interviews, or are they like recruiting firms?
So like my company does IT staffing services, so a lot of times we're working with a lot of big companies around here to identify a software engineer or whatever like that. We recognize that a lot of the people, the talent pool we're pulling from may fall within this bucket, right? But it's hard for us to make sure, say if someone is maybe hard of hearing, right? They can't do a phone screen because that's not the best situation to put them in, right? I don't know if you have any suggestions on how just to be open about it from the beginning of like, hey, if you have any accommodations that you need with this for this interview, but at the same time without offending, we kind of had this back and forth struggle internally. I don't know if you have any suggestions or thoughts.
Yeah, it's a really important part of I'm not an expert in this area, but one, I think we're really well positioned to be influential as a staffing firm in order of creating that safety and educating the various clients that we work with. I think, yes, I think the more proactive we can be, as you're saying, actually also educating the interviewees on what types of accommodations could be afforded to them. And then as soon as someone expresses that they would like to take advantage of one of those accommodations, just facilitating it and making sure that it happens. And that might involve talking on the phone or speaking to all of the people that are going to be on the interview circuit.
And I'll be honest, like most of our customers are more than happy to make organizations because they're trying to increase their diverse pool of talent, right? But it's more on the people that would actually be interviewing. I don't know. I just don't know if is there any groups that right now that are educating people that they have these kind of accessibilities going?
Steve, do you have any thoughts on this question?
Well, I know that at the state, we go out and do disability awareness trainings with companies. I mean, we do that kind of thing. But we're also, anybody who's a client of Voc Rehab, we can give them all those kinds of supports if an employer has questions. If you go to AskJan, AskJan.org, it's got a lot of great information about how to approach someone that may have a need in accommodation, but then it has a dictionary of pretty much every disability you can think of and an accommodation that could potentially work for it. But really and I have to run, but Nikki, you did a great job, and I really applaud you. You really were thorough, and I think that the more people come out and they're willing to talk and say what I have or what is about me doesn't keep me from being successful. And if we can get to the point where we don't even ask that question, where we just look at somebody's skills and abilities and that they do a good job, I think that you're helping move that conversation forward. So thanks for doing that. And share my, when you send this out, please share my contact information, and I'll look forward to hearing more from all of you.
Wait, sorry, what's your name?
Mike.
Mike. Yeah, that's a good question. And I think for all of, again, if we look at the folks with disabilities who have jobs, only 20% are disclosing, we've got to imagine that's going to be even lower in the interview process because there's that sense of, oh, that much more is at stake, and am I going to be able to get this job if I disclose? So I don't know if I have all the answers for you, but I think you're touching on an important problem that we should all be working collectively to solve.
I have a suggestion.
Or yeah,
I just have a suggestion. People can disagree. I actually think that the interview process is a little bit broken. And so there's a way to almost normalize it to where if you're going down the path with a candidate, you could send them a form that just says, do you prefer phone or video? Do you prefer this day part or that day part? Do you prefer hearing enabled devices or not hearing enabled devices? Do you prefer whiteboarding or, this is for the technical side, whiteboarding or pair programming? Do you want to use your own computer? Do you want to use our computer? So you throw in non-disabled type questions in there as well and just give it to everyone. And I think that's the way to normalize the process because this goes beyond the disabled community. Things like video screens are actually very difficult for the transgender community. They're difficult for veterans with any sort of scars or marks on their face. And so it actually giving that option ahead of time and some sort of survey to everyone, I think levels the playing field and kind of gives everyone a little bit of the accessibility to answer without saying, oh my God, it's a stigma.
My wife, Susan. I feel like I'm talking a lot. So Mike, in response to your question, it clearly is a gap, and there's a soon-to-be nonprofit that I'm working with here locally. It's a really new startup called the Possibility Pool, and they are an online matchmaking, a job seeker, employer seeker, specifically for people with disabilities. So companies come to them, they sign up companies who want to hire people with disabilities, and then they bring in a candidate pool of people with different disabilities, and they ask them questions up front. What type of environment are you comfortable in working? All these upfront questions that we need to get out of the way that employers can't typically just ask. And so it's how do you ask these upfront? Candidates really want to be connected, and then they make the connection. And then it funnels candidates through the interview process or the pool. And so I can post that to the Slack channel. It's really new. They're kind of still in beta mode, and I'm hopefully joining the board soon. And it's something that they're just trying to get launched in Denver. But I see this as having huge impact nationwide, clearly.
Tasha, I have a question. I'll come back to you.
It wasn't so much a question, it was more of a suggestion. So I think going to Elaine's original comment and Amber's comment, You know, it's like, how do you broach these topics where you can create a safe space for people with disabilities to, like, have a place where they, if they choose to, like, start talking about it. And I think the Tech Disability Project is like an amazing place to start, because there are posts coming out with people of all these different stories that, like, you're just not hearing in the diversity and inclusion conversation right now. Like, for the most part, diversity and inclusion leaves it at, like, women and people of color. And that's where the conversations are ending. And when you look at this blog, you'll be able to see 30 different stories from different people with different disabilities sharing their unique experiences in the tech sector, in the workplace. And, like, that could be an amazing place to start these conversations if you're trying to create that space for people who may have a disability to want to come out and start talking about it.
Thank you.
What was that called again? TechDisabilityProject.pro.
So I'm not in the tech space, but I have noticed a bit of a conversation around neurodiversity, and there's sort of like this tingling sense that there's a stereotype developing that people who are on the spectrum make really good software developers or really good tech people. And I'm not exactly sure what my question is here, but I'm just wondering if that's my own singular perception or if other people have noticed that too. I feel like I was at Denver Startup Week. I heard it come up in conversations a bunch of times that people on the spectrum are really good at coding. And I was like, whoa, that's weird. And I wonder if you see anything that's sort of facilitating that stereotype happening, and things that we can do proactively as a community, particularly a D&I community, to try to mitigate that stereotype from kind of formalizing.
And I assume you're coming at this from a perspective of, you know, stereotypes hold us back in general, and we shouldn't be making blanket
Yes.
assumptions. Yeah. That's interesting. I'll tell you, after 10 years working in SF, in tech, and mostly startups, no one that I ever worked with disclosed that they were autistic in the workplace. So I do think that most likely some of my coworkers are or were, but that wasn't something that they were talking about. So I think there are two sides. There's the disability employment side and wanting to create more space and language just to support the neurodiverse community in succeeding in tech. And you also point out that, yeah, anytime we're making blanket stereotypes, blanket assumptions about any group of people, that there's a little bit of a danger. So I don't know, maybe other folks have ideas, but I think in general on conversations that we can influence, there's creating an inclusive language just often takes a tiny tweak, including a word like often or possibly or some of the time. And I think actually in my experience in tech, we need to be moving away from such absolute statements all of the time about everything and always being absolute, and create a more lightly held comments that we're making. So maybe it's less of a critique on the fact that it's coming up and more of a critique on the specific language that folks are using of the assumptions they're making.
And maybe the fear that I have is that it's going to morph into this idea like, oh, this person has identified as autistic, they should be a coder, instead of and like being like, this person fits in this box, and not necessarily learning about people as individuals. That's, I guess, the fear that I have for that stereotype.
If I can sort of add, to maybe change that kind of conversation around. I had a conversation with high school students who were not thinking about developing in any regard, but they were all technologists in some space, right? Whether they were product or marketing, they're using technology. So, yeah, you kind of get stigmatized as a result of a person being autistic, and this is the only capabilities they have. But as you start to develop technologies that allows them to develop outside of that, I think that's where it kind of starts to switch over.
Yeah, I just want to add, maybe part of the reason that we're starting to hear more around that is because companies such as SAP, Google, Apple, they have specific initiatives around trying to attract people on the spectrum that maybe haven't been doing as well in traditional interviews, and creating a pipeline, so to speak, because they know that, one, there's a talent shortage within that skill set, and you're right, a lot of these people are drawn to that for whatever reason, but now there's companies out here, they're talking about it, they're trying to get people involved in their programs to attract the talent. You know, at the end of the day, they're probably trying to market the best talent regardless if it's, you know, someone on the spectrum or not, so that's kind of why you may have been hearing about it a lot.
Yeah, I think I'm going to channel some kind of black radical theory on critiques of black excellence, right? Because I think what we're experiencing is this idea of autism excellence. So it's this idea like, oh, look at so-and-so, they're making it in the system. And rather than saying, what is wrong with the systems that we've designed to be inclusive to everyone with disabilities, including those with autism, we're saying, oh, but you actually fit in really well in this part of our society, so we're going to assume that you with autism are good at coding, so we're going to throw you in that direction, rather than really questioning our systems of power. And I think, you know, there's a lot of problems there.
A different comment, but I do want to comment. Just basically, as someone who's looking to be a better ally, all around, I really appreciate that this presentation took time to not only provide vocabulary and language, but also taking the time to provide nuances within communities. Myself being part of the Hispanic or Latinx, that's like a whole debate as far as like what's the right term, what's the right terminology. And so just wanted to essentially appreciate that you pointed out the fact that like the disability community is nuanced, and what individuals may want is going to be an individualistic basis, and that it is so important to drive that point home. I feel like we forget that a lot whenever we have those conversations, and just want to point it out and say thank you.
This is like a completely different comment as well, but kind of bring out that I find that, at least for me, I mean, I don't necessarily identify as disabled, but instead of saying, do you need help, I like to ask people, would you like help? Because it's not about need all the time. Sometimes somebody doesn't need help, but it would just be easier if they got it. And, you know, sometimes maybe they do need it, but they just don't want it. And that's okay. Either one is okay. So that's what I don't like to use even the word need. I just like, what is your preference? Would you like help? That's the language I like to use with anyone, whether they're disabled or not.
Just coming from like the HR perspective, I'm wondering if you've seen or experienced anything that was less sensitive, something that you didn't appreciate from an escalation standpoint regarding workplace accommodations. We, kind of being a startup, we're building a lot of our systems. So we had an opportunity this summer where I built out our accommodation request system, and I'm wondering, is this something where it's accessible enough to our employees that will want to or need to take advantage of it?
So kind of best practices when it comes to accommodation process. Whew, yeah, I think your question is stretching me a little bit. I don't want to pretend that I have more expertise than I do in this case. I can tell you on a personal level, the story that I shared earlier on the accommodation slide of, okay, this is what I went through, I did leave out a part that was a hitch. Which was that my manager was the person that needed to buy my equipment. And my manager was an extremely busy executive who didn't necessarily have time to pay attention to all the details, and he ordered the wrong computer that was twice the weight of the computer that I needed, and that kind of created this difficult situation. It slowed things down, it was awkward, and I think a lot of folks with disabilities say, what's hard about the accommodations process is that I have to use some of my capital on that. And then when I go to ask for a raise or more responsibility or just push back on my boss because they're saying something that I disagree with, it's a little bit harder. And so I think some of those more kind of nuanced social aspects of kind of trying to iron out the process to make sure that it's kind of as low friction as possible. And yeah, I don't know if that helps, but I'd be happy to brainstorm. I just don't want to go myself as more of an expert than I am.
And truly, my question is kind of coming out of the space where the request that we had, it turned out to be more of a it was not someone who had the need for an accommodation. It was just I feel like I'd rather have this kind of a schedule because this would be better for my personal life kind of a situation. And so we changed it from your doctor may contact you with a note to we will talk to your doctor specifically. We will send them our form.